As we've seen, a lot of the configuration on the hosts is done separately. We have to configure a variety of settings, including storage and networking, on multiple hosts. We have to configure them on each separate host. There is a feature in vSphere, which is part of Enterprise Plus, called Host Profiles, which allows us to take some of the configuration from one host and apply it to multiple other hosts. So from menu, we go to Policies and Profiles and go to Host Profiles. Select Extract a Host Profile and we'll select Host 2 and we're going to call this Standard Profile. Now this functionality is actually most helpful when it comes to hosts that have been configured using a process called auto deploy. Auto deploy is the ability to build a host over the network using Pixie. It's not in the scope of the vSphere Foundations exam. That's not until you get to the professional level exam, but that's one of the main uses for it. We can now go and have a look at our host profile, say edit, and we can see the settings that it has gathered from our host. So we just expand a few of these out. Take a look at networking configuration, standard switch. We can see vSwitch 0 there, the link configuration, the number of ports, what security policy is applied. We can see the virtual machine port groups, and we can actually add them and remove them on this profile as well. So we can modify this profile before we apply it to any other hosts. So we don't need to go and edit a host and retrieve the settings every time. We can just modify the profile and assign the profile to the hosts. So now I'm going to deploy a brand new host and I'm going to use this profile to configure that host. So we now have an additional host deployed in our cluster. There's no VMs running on it yet because it has no data stores. So it can't vMotion any VMs onto it, even though DRS is probably there trying desperately to move them around as we speak. So we'll right click on our host, go to Host Profiles and attach a host profile. We'll select the standard profile that I created earlier. The process that's completed, so if I just refresh that, we should see here we have the host compliance widget added. So we'll go to the details tab and take a closer look here. So status is unknown because we haven't checked the compliance yet, so let's check it. And this will find a list of items which are out of compliance and invite us to correct them. We now need to remediate this host to bring it in line with this host profile. But before we do that, there's a number of parameters in that host profile which are going to be unique to each host. Namely, IP addresses is probably the best example. And that's where this host customizations section comes in. So this contains a list of all the variables that will be specific to each host. It's also completed some of them for us through extrapolating through what is already configured on the host and generating some MAC addresses to be used for certain things. But there's a few here for IP addresses which are not complete. So we adjust these column widths so we can see better what it is we're looking at. So we can see this is our iSCSI A port group, which actually we're using for NFS in this environment at the moment. Set that IP there. And the subnet mask. We have the iSCSI B there that we also need to fill in. The rest should be fine. We have a couple here that are blank, but they are not required. So we can just allow the host to use its current settings or its default settings for those. So with those set, we'll click OK. And now we'll click on remediate and remediate. So we'll take a look at the results of that. And it's failed. And we can see here that we have this warning: the host will be put into maintenance mode. So it's detected that there are a number of tasks that need to be completed, which will cause a disruption to this host. So it wants us to put it into maintenance mode first. So let's do that. Enter maintenance mode. As I say, there's no VMs running on this host at the moment, so that goes straight into maintenance mode. And we should now be able to remediate. Ordinarily, the host will be put into maintenance mode automatically. However, as this is a 2-node cluster and we have admission control enabled, it was unable to do so. Hence, we had to put it into maintenance mode manually. And that baseline now shows as compliant. We take a look, we have the data stores. Going to configure and look at our switches. We have our second switch there with the iSCSI configuration on it. We can now take this out of maintenance mode, and I expect pretty quickly we'll see DRS move some virtual machines onto this host to free up the load on the other host. And there we go, straight away. So that host is now very quickly configured to match the other host. We can also attach our host profile baselines at the cluster or data center level. So I'll attach my baseline to the cluster because I want all of the hosts in my cluster to be consistent. Take a look at the summary page for my cluster. And we can now see that the other host shows as compliant, which it should do because it's this host that we took the configuration from in the first place. Thanks for watching. In our last module, we'll look at vSAN, which allows us to create a virtual SAN using the disks installed directly into our hosts.